Lesson 7, what fraction of a group? So let's think about dividing things into groups when we can't even make one whole. Our I-cans. I can tell when a question is asking for a number of groups and that number is less than 1. I can use diagrams and multiplication and division equations to represent and answer what fraction of a group question. So make sure you have all this down, today's date, page number, and you're ready to move on. All right, let's do a quick bit of estimation to kind of help us figure things out. So what is 1/3 of 7? Well, it'll be pretty close to 2, isn't it? Because 7 is pretty close to 6. 6 times 1/3 would give us 2, so it's a little bit more than 2, isn't it? What about 4/5 of 9 2/3? Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more or a little bit less than what it is right now, right? Because 4/5 is really close to 1 whole. So our answer when we solve this would be really close to what it was. What about here? 2 4/7 of 10 1/9. This is going to be pretty close to 5 as an answer, right? Because we have 2. It's about 2 1/2 here. So it's actually going to be less than 5. But it's not going to be super less than 5 because this is only 1/2. So it's going to probably be around somewhere around 4 because we have a little bit more here. And that's all we're doing here is thinking about the reasoning with these. As multiplication, sorry about that. As multiplication problems, when you have of, you typically are talking about multiplying. So 4 1/3 times 7, 4/5 times 9 2/3, and 2 4/7 times 10 1/9. And that's all we're doing is just kind of looking at what's close to each one. Let's look at some fractions of a rope to keep working on what we're working away with here. So we're going to compare each of these ropes to the length of rope A and think about how those look as multiplication equations. So rope B is how many times greater than A? Well, A is 1, 2, 3, 4. B is 4, 5, 6. Total of 20. So 4 times, or A is not 4 times. 4 times what gets us A? Or 4 times what gets us B? I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 5, isn't it? Because it's 5 times as long. What would be the division sentence here? Yeah, if we take it, if it was 5 times as long, if we take 20 and divide it by 5, that gets us back to our original 4 that was length A. What about C? Well, it's 9, isn't it? Oh, sorry, my drawing's not working very well right at the second. It's 9. So rope C is how many times as long as A? Well, it's 2 times, that gets you 8, but then you need one more part. Because it's rope A times something gets you 9, right? Well, what's the missing number here? We should have had 2 and 1/4. How do I know it's 2 and 1/4? Well, 2 times 4 is 8. And then if I take 4 times 1/4, I get 4/4, which is 1 whole. 4/4 and 8 make 9. And then as a division, you're talking about 9 divided by 2 and 1/4, getting us 4. What about rope D? Yeah, D is 3. Oops. Is 3 long, right? D is actually 3/4 of A. Because think about it. A is 4, right? And if you take the original length here, you take that 4 and you multiply it by 3/4. Golly, I did that backwards again. If you take the 3 that we know, you get that by taking 3/4 times 4. Or you could also think of it as the 4 for the long part, as A is the long, and dividing it by 3/4 will get you to that 3. Okay? Ice cream. Oh, wait, we're talking about fractions still. So let's remember that if we did something like this, it was 2 divided by 4/5. You get one group of 4/5, you would get 2 groups of 4/5, and then you would have a half a group of 4/5. So that when you take 2 and you divide it by 4/5, you actually end up with 2 and 1/2. Because 4/5 together, that's one group. There's another group, and then we have half of one more. Okay, we got one batch of ice cream that the recipe uses 9 cups of milk. Chef makes different amounts of ice cream on different days, and here's how much milk they use each of those days. Okay, so are there any of these days where we make less than one batch? Yeah, Thursday and Friday, right? These are less than 9 cups, which is what the recipe calls for a full batch. These are more than one whole batch. This one is slightly more because it's 12, and this is more than double one batch. And we can prove that by looking at some pictures of it here. With Monday and Tuesday, we can see that in one batch, we have 9 cups, and it takes 3 more cups to make the 12 or use the 12 cups that they use total. So how many batches is that? Well, that's 1, and we have 3 out of the 9, so this is 1 and 3/9, or 1 and 1/3. What about here? Yeah, we've got 2 whole batches. That's 18. And then we need 1, 2, 3, 4.5 cups. Well, how does 4 and 1/2 cups compared to 9? Yeah, it's half, isn't it? So this makes 2 and 1/2 batches. Here we have 6 cups that get used on Wednesday, and that's less than one batch, right? So how much of a batch do we make here? It's a fraction of a batch, isn't it? We have 1 set, we have 2 sets, we have 6 total out of the 9, so we can think of it as 6/9 or 2/3 of a batch. What about here with the 7 and 1/2 cups? This gets a little trickier here, right? Because we have to think of these in groups of 1/2, 1 and 1/2. So we have, in the way they did it, they took the 7 and 1/2 and they thought about the whole number with it and 1/2 with it. So we've got 1 and 1/2, 2 and 2 1/2 make 3 altogether. Got another chunk that way as well. So that's 4 batches there, or 4 parts of a batch. Really, you almost have to think of these in cutting all of these in half, right? Which gets you a total of 18 parts. Since we only need 7 and 1/2. So that gives you, for each one of these is 2, each of the holes is 2, and then you have that half at the end. That gives you 14, that gives you 15 18ths batch. Because think about it, it was 9 cups for a whole batch. If we use 7 and 1/2, they made it into 1 and 1/2 cups. I don't like that so much. I would cut each of these into halves, so that way I've got a nice neat number, and I can see that I have 15 halves out of the total of 18, because if I make 9 and then cut those into all halves, it makes 18. Divide both those by 3, I get 5/6 of a whole batch. And does that make sense with 7 and 1/2 compared to the 9 cups that was used in one batch? Yeah, 7 and 1/2 isn't that far from 9, and 5/6 is pretty close to 1 whole, so that does make logical sense in this situation. So what fraction of 5 is 1/2? Well, 1/2 is going to end up being a lot of parts here, right? So if all of this is 5, what's the fractional part here? Well, so they went ahead and broke it into 2 groups making, or 2 chunks making 1 whole. So that way we could think of how much a half is. So what fraction is 5 of 5 is 1/2? Well, we've got 10 parts here, right? So it's 1/10. How can we tell if the fraction here is going to be more than 1 or less than 1 before we calculate? Well, we're taking this 1/2, we're taking this 5, and we're having to look at pretty small parts because we're thinking about these in half pieces, right? So we get pretty small that way. If we were talking about some fraction that was a larger fraction here, it's going to be closer to 1. It's going to have to be something different. It would have to be kind of opposite if it was going to be more than 1, right? What's the multiplication? What's the division look like for this? Well, for the multiplication, we would have what? Yeah, something times 5 equals 1/2. And we can think of it division-wise as 1/2 divided by 5 gives us our 1/10. So we dug into both these things, looking at how each one works each way, and I think we're all set. So thanks for watching.